Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. We are continuing the Math Madness videos as we are staying quarantined and social distancing and working from home. So we are still doing the decimal series. We were just going to do 4 videos with the decimal series, but I decided to kind of reach out to those elementary students and cover some of the things that might help them. So today we're going to look at place value and rounding decimals. So I hope this helps you all and gives you a little good review. So don't forget that you can comment in the comments below any topic that you would like help with. I have access to language arts teacher, social studies teacher, and art teacher. I can teach 5 through 9 math and science. So any topic that you would like a little mini lesson on, just comment in the comments below and I will try to get that together for you. Don't forget that I do make a mistake for my students to identify for bonus points for my class. So teachers, feel free to use this in your class if you would like to. But I hope this helps everybody. So let's get started. Okay, we are looking at place value and rounding. This is my YouTube channel for you to keep up with any videos. And this is also my Instagram if you ever want to message me the mistakes you find for my students, but also any content that you would like a little mini lesson on. Okay, so for the notes, we're going to take this number and I'm going to label the place value of each number. And I'm going to turn it sideways so that we can write sideways on it and label it neatly. But I always start where the decimal is. So to the left of the decimal, that is the first place value, and that is the ones. And we're just going to start on the left side of the decimal place. And then the next place would be the tens. The next place value would be the hundreds. And then after the comma would be the thousands. And then we have the 10,000s and the 100,000s. So then on the other side of the decimal, we start getting into the decimal places. And a lot of students like to say the first place value, since over here is ones, this would be once. No, that is one of my worst pet peeves. So this is the tenths place value. And then the hundredths. The thousandths. And the 10,000ths. So this is so important to know those place values when you start adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, comparing, ordering, rounding like today. So it's so important to know those place values. So I hope this little diagram here helps your students. Okay, now when we are looking at place value as well, there's 3 different forms that you might see a question asked for. So there is the standard form, and that contains numbers and decimals, and that's how you usually write numbers. So the example is 12,563 and 48 thousandths. So the key thing there too is I want to go back to this page, because when you are writing or when you are reading decimals and numbers, when you get to the decimal, you say and. that's when you know that there's a decimal there. So that is another important thing, especially when you get to the word form. But right now we're going to look at expanded form. So expanded form, by adding, or you write that by adding the individual place values to form a mathematical expression. So an example would be 200 plus 10 plus 4 plus 4/10 plus 6/100. So that's breaking down those place values. It's also seen as writing the decimal places as fractions. So if it's in the if it's in the tenths place, you put the number over 10. If it's in the hundredths place, you would put the number over 100 in a fraction. So that's also another way to write those. Then you have word form, and that is the way to express a number by using the words. So 215 and 28/100. So that's when you write it out. Okay, so this is when some notes for when you are rounding. You're going to look to the right of the underlined or chosen place value. And if the number is 4 or below, the number will stay the same, and everything to the right turns to zeros. And then if the number is 5 or above, the number increases by 1, and everything to the right turns to zeros. Now, my students had a saying for this, and I don't really remember that saying. So students, if you're watching this, put it in the comments below what the saying was that you all told me, and I'm so sorry that I forgot, but it was really neat, and I really enjoyed it. So please let me know what that saying was. Okay, so let's look at this example. So we have this number up here, and our first question is, what number is in the hundredths place? So remember, the hundredths place is to the right of the decimal. That is a decimal place. So the first one is tenths, the second one is hundredths. So that digit in the hundredths place is 6. Then we have what number is in the thousandths or thousands place. So now it doesn't have that THS on it, so now we know that it is to the left of the decimal. So we have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. So the number in the thousands place is 8. What number is in the thousandths place? Now it has that THS on it, so we know we need to go to the right of our decimal. So that's tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So that would be 7. Then we have what place is the number 2 in? And I don't think in our notes we went this high, but this is a great example so that you can see it. So here's our 2. So let's start saying with our places to get up to the 2. So we have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, and then we get to millions. So that would be millions. And then the next one would be billions, then trillions. Okay, so now let's look what number is in the tens place. So we have ones and then we have tens. So that would be 4. Okay, we are looking at 2,867 and 7/800. So first it says write the number in word form. So we're literally going to write it just like I read it. So we're going to start off with 2,000. And so many people say 2,867. And that's really not the correct way to say it, because remember, when you say and, that's when you put a decimal. So we have 2,867. And because we got to our decimal, 78. So you don't write 7/10, 800ths. You write it like you read it. So we say 78 hundredths. Now it says write the number in expanded form. So we're going to start all the way to the left with our greatest place value. And the whole numbers are pretty easy because you just write that number and then the rest is zeros. And then we're going to add it to, our next one is 800 plus 60 plus 7 plus, so remember there's two ways we can write this, but the most common I see is in fraction form. So that would be 7/10 because it's in the tenths place plus 8/100. But remember you could have wrote 7/10 and 8/100. It's whatever way your teacher prefers, but you need to be familiar with both ways in case you see it on a test or something. All right, let's look at the next example. So we're going to round to the underlined number. So in this case, the 5 is underlined in the hundredths place. Now remember, we have to look to the right. Now if the number to the right is 5 or higher, then that number that's underlined is going to increase by 1. So here it is 5, so that 5 that's underlined is going to become a 6. But when it is with decimals, all of the numbers to the left stay the same, but all of the numbers to the right would either turn to zeros, or if it's behind the decimal, you can just drop them. You don't have to rewrite them. So I'm going to rewrite the numbers in front, and then the numbers on the back behind it can either turn to zeros, or you could have left the zeros off. So now let's look at this one. Now we're rounding the ones place. So we're going to look to the right, even though it's behind the decimal, and it is higher than 5, so that does mean we need to round that up. Now this is a great example, because if I round 9 up, it becomes 10. So that means this is actually going to become a 0, and you're going to have to increase the one next to it by 1, which the 7 becomes an 8. So all the numbers in front of it stays the same. Then all the numbers behind it becomes zeros, but we do get to the decimal and all the other numbers become zeros. It is not necessary to write those zeros, but you definitely can if you would like to. Okay, let's look at the next one. So we have round the following number to the nearest whole number. Now this is a great example because when we are rounding to the nearest whole number and we have a decimal, it doesn't necessarily give you an exact place. But that round to the nearest whole number is another way of saying round to the ones place. So we're really going to have to look at this 1. And we look to the right. It is 7. So remember, 4 and below stays the same. 5 and higher does increase by 1. So then all of the numbers in front of it stays the same. And then all of the numbers behind it would turn to zeros. But remember, if it's behind the zeros, or behind the decimal, then you don't have to really write the zeros. Okay, so we have round the following number to the nearest hundredth. So now that we have that TH on the end, we're going to have to look behind the decimal. So we have we got tenths, hundredths, and we want the hundredths place. So we're looking at the 3. We're going to have to look to the right. 5 and higher rounds up. 4 and below stays the same. So we are going to look at the 7. We are going to have to round that to a 4. Everything in front of it stays the same. and then everything behind it would turn to zeros. But since it's behind the decimal, we really do not have to write the zeros. And I just really want to look at, because I've just noticed that none of the examples have stayed the same. So let's just kind of look at if we had to round to the 7, to the thousandths place. If we look to the right, that one is 4. So remember, 4 and below, you stay the same. So if I was rounding to the thousandths place, that 7 would need to stay the same. And then that 4 could be a 0 if you would like to. In that case, we just stayed the same. We didn't have to round it. Let's look at one last one, round to the nearest 100. So now we're looking at ones, tens, hundreds. We're looking at the 4. So we're going to look to the right, and we're going to round it to, now here is where everything behind it has to turn to zeros because it's in front of the 0. You do have to put those zeros. That is huge. And so important for you to change those numbers to zeros. But now remember, if it's behind the decimal, you necessarily do not have to put those zeros, but you definitely can. Thank you all for watching my video. I really hope that this helped you and that it was a good review for my students and a good help for those younger students that are working with place value and rounding and even looking at the different forms of standard form, word form, and expanded form. So let me know in the comments if there's any other thing that you would like to see content-wise that I can make a little mini lesson for to help you all. Don't forget, student, if you're one of my students, then you can identify the mistake that I made for extra credit. And I hope that this helped you all. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if it helped you. And don't forget to hit that red subscribe button so that you can stay on top of all of the math videos that's coming your way to help you while you're working at home. So, hope y'all enjoyed it. Bye, y'all.